the gateway to the West, a city of rhythm, resilience, and unparalleled charm. St. Louis, America's murder capital, a title no city wants, but a reality we can't ignore. With numbers spiking to staggering heights, we dive deep into the grim data. Hear from the people on the front lines, fighting the good fight, striving for change in the heart of this crisis. St. Louis has garnered a reputation for its alarming rates of murder and overall crime. With a specific emphasis on its impact within the Black community, the city has consistently ranked among the highest in terms of murder rates, highlighting the severity of the issue. Unfortunately, this disproportionately affects the Black population, creating a distressing pattern of violence that has persisted over time. The roots of this problem can be traced back to a combination of factors, including historical segregation, economic disparity, and limited access to resource and opportunities. The aftermath of the Ferguson riots and the birth of the Black Lives Matter movement further shed light on the ongoing struggle faced by the Black community in St. Louis. Addressing these deep-seated issues requires a comprehensive approach that tackles systematic inequalities, fosters community engagement, and provides support for at-risk individuals. Efforts should be made to promote social and economic empowerment, improve educational opportunities, and implement targeted interventions to break the cycle of violence and create a safer environment for all residents of St. Louis. The police made a significant discovery during a raid. They successfully recovered a substantial amount of cash, totaling over $300,000. Along with the cash, law enforcement also seized a notable arsenal of weapons, which included 6 guns. Of particular concern was the presence of an assault-style weapon, indicating the potential for increased harm and danger. The police did not only discover firearms at the scene, but they also discovered tactical armored vests there as well. These protective vests, made with the sole purpose of shielding individuals from harm while they are engaged in hazardous activity. These protective vests were made with the sole purpose of shielding individuals from harm while they are engaged in hazardous activity. The finding of such equipment raises significant concerns regarding the objectives and actions of those involved. The fact that these items were found raises the possibility that the person was involved in illegal endeavors, such as organized crime or other underhanded dealings. The successful recovery of large sums of cash, along with the possession of firearms and other types of tactical equipment, highlights the importance of effective law enforcement efforts in the fight against criminal behavior. Investigations into the events that led up to this discovery have begun. The purpose of these investigations is to ensure the safety of the general public and to hold those responsible accountable for their action. Shootings are becoming all too commonplace in a variety of St. Louis neighborhoods, contributing to the city's troubling reality, which is characterized by high-level violence. The frequency with which these incidents take place paints a troubling picture of the city's overall safety and security. Residents are living in fear as a direct result of the frequent shooting incidents that have taken place in their community, which has far-reaching consequences for their overall well-being. The fact that the impact isn't confined to a single neighborhood, but rather spreads across a number of different communities, is an indication of how widespread the problem is. In order to combat the pervasive violence that exists in community, a multi-pronged approach is required. One that includes collaboration between law enforcement, community organizations, and local residents. The focus of efforts should be on proactive measures such as increasing police presence, implementing targeted interventions in high crime areas, and developing community-based programs with the goals of preventing violence and offering support to individuals who are at risk. In order to make neighborhoods safer, it is necessary to address the fundamental factors that contribute to violent behavior. These factors include socioeconomic disparities, limited access to resources, and systematic inequality. The city can work towards reducing violence and building a safer environment for all of its residents by encouraging community engagement, promoting education, and implementing effective strategies for crime prevention. This can be accomplished by fostering engagement. The troubled past and present of the city can be attributed, in part, to factors such as poverty, segregation, and gang activity. Because of the legacy of segregation, significant racial and socio-economic disparities have developed, leaving some communities with disproportionately high rates of poverty and few opportunities for upward mobility. Gangs have been able to thrive in these disadvantaged areas, which has contributed to a vicious cycle of criminal activity and violent behavior. Gangs provide a community for people who don't feel they belong in society, as well as a means to make money on their own terms. All too frequently, this results in drug trafficking, gang warfare, and other illegal activities that serve to exacerbate the problems already plaguing the city. To be more specific, drug use is a significant factor in the violent behavior that is prevalent in these neighborhoods. In addition to fostering addiction, desperation, and the commission of crime as a means to fund drug use, the illegal drug trade is responsible for the proliferation of firearms. This is just one of the many negative effects of the drug trade. These pervasive problems call for a strategic response that takes into account the underlying causes of inequality, creates economic opportunities, and uses targeted interventions to reduce gang activity and drug-related violence. Creating economic opportunities is one of the ways that this problem can be addressed. Only through concerted efforts to elevate undeserved communities can the city start to make headway in overcoming its troubled history and laying the groundwork for a more welcoming and secure future for all its residents. St. Louis played a significant role as a major hub for slave trading in the 1800s, leaving a dark stain on the city's history as a result of its involvement in this activity. Because of its advantageous location along the Mississippi River, the city quickly became an important hub for the purchasing, selling, and transportation of people who were held in slavery. St. Louis's social fabric has been irrevocably altered as a result of the legacy of the city's troubled history. St. Louis was confronted with the difficulties of poverty and segregation as a direct result of the decline of its manufacturing industry. As factories went out of business, economic opportunities decreased, which resulted in a significant number of residents having difficulty making ends meet. This decline disproportionately affected communities that were already marginalized, resulting in increased rates of poverty and limited access to essential resources. Segregation further exacerbated the disparities by creating separate and unequal living conditions for different racial and ethnic groups within the city. Discriminatory practices and policies were responsible for creating segregation. The effects of these historical wrongdoings are still being felt in the present day, which highlights the ongoing necessity of efforts to address systematic inequalities, promote inclusivity, and foster economic revitalization. The Pruitt-Igoe housing projects in St. Louis gained a bad reputation as a result of their association with crime and poverty. These St. Louis housing projects were beset by a variety of problems, including drug abuse and prostitution. These housing projects were initially built with the intention of providing affordable housing for residents with low incomes. However, they ended up becoming hotbeds of social problems instead. The difficulties that the residents of the Pruitt-Igoe housing projects already faced was made significantly worse over the course of time as a result of the substandard maintenance and a lack of access to essential services. The conditions that resulted in this created an atmosphere that was ideal for the growth of criminal activity. In particular, drug trafficking and addiction took root in these communities, which resulted in an increase in violent crime and further solidified the vicious cycle of poverty. As a result, vulnerable people began engaging in illegal activity like prostitution as a means of subsistence, which contributed to the proliferation of this problem. The prevalence of such activities within the projects was exacerbated by a lack of resources, restricted economic opportunities, and social isolation. The experiment with the Pruitt-Igoe housing projects that was a failure serves as a stark reminder of the necessity of taking a holistic approach to addressing the poverty and providing supportive services to communities that are at a disadvantage. It highlights how important it is to create environments that are safe and nurturing for residents so that they can thrive and break free from the grip that crime and poverty have on them. Gangs that participated in a variety of legal activities such as gambling, armed robbery, extortion, and bootlegging began to form in the city as a result of the proliferation of such activities. These illegal businesses became widespread, which resulted in the increase in the overall level of violence as well as frequent confrontations with law enforcement. During the era of Prohibition, gangs seized the opportunity to profit from illegal alcohol distribution, commonly known as bootlegging. They established intricate networks and engaged in turf wars, resulting in violent confrontations between rival groups vying for control of the lucrative trade. Armed robbery and extortion became additional sources of income for these gangs. They targeted businesses, individuals, and even other criminal organizations, using violence and intimidation to enforce their control and extract profits. Illegal gambling operations also thrived, attracting individuals seeking both entertainment and the chance to win money. These operations were often controlled by organized crime groups who used their influence and connections to maintain their dominance. The activities of these gangs created a climate of fear and instability, as law enforcement agencies struggled to combat their widespread influence and criminal operations. It took concerted efforts and the implementation of effective law enforcement strategies to curb the violence and restore a sense of safety within the city. And that's all for today. Subscribe for more.